What's taking place in these cities and in these blue states, ladies and gentlemen, is nothing short of breakaway government. Whether it's LA, whether it's Portland, whether it's Chicago, whether it's Seattle, other big cities, breakaway government. What I mean by that is you have effectively these enclaves of Democrat Party control, mayors and city council, mostly in blue states with Democrat governors, that will not allow the federal government to enforce federal law under our federal Constitution, in this case, the immigration laws and deportation. We now have instances where mayors have told the local police to stand down. We have now instances, as we saw last night and before, federal law enforcement, ICE, and others under attack, physically under attack, by waves of riotous, violent Democrats. Effectively, I call this the private Democrat Party militia, where they want mostly illegal aliens, actually, but citizens too, to rise up, to take on ICE, federal law enforcement, to prevent the president from enforcing federal immigration law that was passed over many decades, in which he has the constitutional right and obligation to execute federal law. We see this with Newsom in California. We see it with Pritzker in Illinois. We see it in Oregon and Portland, and we've seen it elsewhere. Now, the president does have the ultimate authority under the Insurrection Act. The Insurrection Act of 1807/1808. It's a federal law that authorized the president to deploy the military and federalize National Guard troops within the United States to suppress civil unrest, insurrection, and rebellion. That's correct. It's under Title 10 of the U.S. Code. You can check it out yourself. It's an exception, a significant exception, to Posse Comitatus Act of 1878 that typically prevents federal military forces from acting as domestic law enforcement. Now, the act permits the president to deploy troops domestically under three main conditions. When a state requests it, so that's not happening here. When federal law enforcement is impractical due to unlawful actions against U.S. authority, that's the key right there. Or when domestic violence or conspiracies prevent inhabitants from exercising their constitutional rights. So it's under the second condition. Under the second condition. Now, this act has been triggered more than you might know. It was passed in 1807, and it was triggered in 1808 by Thomas Jefferson on violations of the Embargo Act around Lake Champlain. It was triggered in February 10, 1831 by Andrew Jackson. A rebellion suppressed, a slave rebellion suppressed. January 28, 1834, a riot over labor disputes in Maryland. Again, Jackson called out the military. It was triggered by Abraham Lincoln, April 15, 1861, the secession of southern states, the American Civil War. He triggered the Insurrection Act. October 17, 1871, Ulysses S. Grant used the Insurrection Act to put down white supremacists and insurgency by former Confederates. He used it on May 22nd, 1873, to put down violence in Louisiana after a contested election. Grant used it on December 21, 1874, again, to put down white supremacists in Vicksburg, Mississippi. Grant used it, you can see how horrendous the post-Civil War period was. Used it in 1874 to put down an attempt by white supremacists to overthrow the government in Arkansas. Grant used it again, September 15, 1874, to put down a coup in Louisiana. He used it again, October 17, 1876, to put down white supremacist paramilitaries in South Carolina. October 7, 1878, Rutherford B. Hayes used the Insurrection Act. There was a war between rival business gang factions in Lincoln County, New Mexico. Chester Arthur, May 3, 1882, gang violence in the Arizona Territory, gang suppression. He used it. Grover Cleveland, November 7, 1885, and February 9, 1886, riots against Chinese citizens in the Washington territories occurred in 1885 and 1886. He sent in the military to protect them. Folks, I have a question for you. Do you believe America's best days are still ahead? With the 250th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence coming up in less than a year, my friends at the Heritage Foundation are taking stock of the current situation, and they need your input. They've launched a survey on America's future to gauge how Americans feel right now about where we are as a nation and where we're headed in the next 250 years. You know, for decades, your American values have been under attack, but now, with President Trump's administration in office, we have an opportunity to turn the tide and usher in a new golden age for America. But the Heritage Foundation needs to hear from you. What policies do patriots like you most care about? What do you believe are the defining principles of America? What legacy do you believe we should pass on to the next generation? Please visit heritage.org/Levin today and share your feedback and help shape the future of America. That's heritage.org/LEVIN. Paid for by the Heritage Foundation. Woodrow Wilson used the Insurrection Act, April 28, 1914, to strike an uprising in Colorado. Warren Harding used it August 30, 1921, to stop a strike and uprising in West Virginia. June 21, 1943, Franklin Roosevelt to stop a race riot in Detroit. September 23, 1957, you might recall this one, Dwight Eisenhower called in the National Guard. Black students were being prevented from going to high school in Little Rock. September 30, 1962, John Kennedy used the Insurrection Act, siege and riot at University of Mississippi due to racial integration. June 11, 1963, used it to Governor Alabama, who forbade black students from attending school in Tuscaloosa. September 10, 1963, John Kennedy used the Alabama National Guard, again, to open up integration to schools to black kids. Lyndon Johnson, he used the Insurrection Act. Alabama policemen were suppressing protesters in Selma. July 24, 1967, again, riots in Detroit, to put down the riots in Detroit. April 5, 1968, Johnson used the Insurrection Act to put down riots in multiple states after the assassination of Martin Luther King. November 24, 1987, Ronald Reagan used the Insurrection Act. I was there when it happened. The riot in Atlanta over announced deportations of Cuban detainees. I was chief of staff to the Attorney General. I was the top point staffer working with the Attorney General in the White House, among many other agencies. It was a vicious, brutal, violent, bloody riot. And we called out the Marines, actually. September 20, 1989, and May 1, 1992. George H.W. Bush, in the first instance, looting in the United States Virgin Islands after Hurricane Hugo, he sent in the military. And the second time, the riots in Los Angeles after the acquittal of policemen regarding Rodney King. He used it for riot suppression. So it is not unusual to use the Insurrection Act, the United States military, it could be the Marines or any part of the military, to put down organized violence in defiance of federal law and public safety. Now we have governors, like we had governors in the segregationist South, like we had elements in the Confederate South, among others. The Democrat Party going back to its roots, sanctuary cities, sanctuary states, nullification of federal immigration law, obstructing the deportation of illegal aliens, including vicious criminals. I've been talking about this for month after month after month on Fox, on The Blaze, on radio, posting it on social media, and I want to thank people who have finally figured it out and now are writing columns regurgitating on what I said. They should. Of course, without attribution, I get it. I get it. Everybody wants to be smarter. It's not the way to roll, but that's the problem. That's the times we live in today. So right now, Portland, Oregon, and Chicago, Illinois are breakaway cities under the tutelage of breakaway Democrat governors. There's rioting by illegal aliens and their supporters in these cities. There's Antifa in Portland, which is a violent, law-breaking organization that has attacked that city for half a decade and longer. In Chicago, you have a mayor who is a Marxist, who hates law enforcement, and crime is through the roof. You have a governor who wants to be president, a billionaire who thinks the way you become president is to stop the enforcement of federal law. We have a supremacy clause under our Constitution that does not allow these breakaway cities and states. Sanctuary cities and states are trying to nullify federal immigration laws. I've said again and again. It's now violent. The governor and these mayors, the governors and these mayors are essentially using illegal aliens and their supporters, Antifa and other domestic terrorist type organizations to fight federal law enforcement, to usurp the federal Constitution. We haven't seen it this bad since the lead up to the Civil War. Now they're electing Marxist Islamists who hate our country, who hate it, who hate our founding, who hate the West. All Democrats. Oh, no, they're Democratic Socialists. They find support and power in the Democrat Party. And the Democrat Party operatives, the language they use, they call it the whistleblowing. They're encouraging violence. Despite the fact that Donald Trump was almost assassinated twice, despite the fact that Charlie Kirk was murdered, he was assassinated. Despite the fact that Steve Scalise was critically wounded and almost died a decade or so ago by a Bernie Sanders supporter. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. This definitely has the stench of the Civil War. We're not there yet, but it has the stench. And that's exactly what's taking place. These are not neo-Confederates. They are effectively Confederates for what that word means. They are breakaways. And they're trying to ensure the power of the Democrat Party, the power of their ideology, by maintaining in this country people who are not supposed to be here, by using their power, their local law enforcement, or the lack of use of local law enforcement to help federal law enforcement to ensure that these people stay. And there's one other thing that is truly notorious. They're sending a signal to the U.S. Supreme Court on birthright citizenship. And this is my great fear, that they will intimidate enough of these justices. There is literally zero constitutional basis for birthright citizenship. There's not a single statute that codifies birthright citizenship. But these breakaway cities and states are making it abundantly clear that they are prepared to go full-bore violent. And so are their rogue, detestable, activist, radical federal judges.